End of day, we're taking a look at what's happening in the broader markets. And a second here. So, what I want to show you here is a bunch of thumbnails of different sectors, including what happened in Europe. So, we had this nice bounce off of support. We've been reviewing what should happen in the pre market. So, I'm doing the one after the market close. And what we see is a lot of stocks that came down to areas of support. And we always say look to the left. And you can see so many of these just came down to the pretty much the same reference areas and they bounced up. So now they're coming up to what we call minor resistance, as well as subjective reference points like the 20 MA. You can see there on industrials. See the same thing here on the S&P 500 and pretty much across the board. And looking over at Europe, you can see over at Germany, that bounced up quite nicely off of the low. We basically had technical bounces across the world, from what we're looking at here. Even got, if you look here, Taiwan down at the bottom here. So in our ETF trader, we're always looking for opportunities in other countries as well as commodities. Might be corn or wheat at the appropriate time or copper. But pretty much we stay with these ETFs that are relatively liquid, especially in the US. And as you see, everything now is up into resistance areas and why we think they're going to stall. Just common sense, as we look to the left based on how we do things. And then from there, we'll see to what amount they actually stall, how much they actually pull back, whether these lows are going to hold. And so we look at our market internals, which I'm going to switch to a different page here and take a look at that. So let's just go ahead and do that. This is the page that we look at every morning. So what we see happening here, even though, let me just spread this out a little bit. We see, as much as these markets have come up, this breadth is just barely beginning to reach the top of this plus 100 area, where I explained in pre-market, I think it was this morning, when you get a move off or a low like this, when it's at the start of a new bull move, this breadth internal goes from a minus level, and typically, down here it's around minus 300, which is pretty extreme, and historically the market always bounces from there, as well as being lined up with support, as I've already shown. When it comes off of that low, it goes right up to plus 200 or more. It took 4 days and it couldn't even get up to 100. So while breadth intraday was decent, it wasn't great because most of the times it'll blast up there within 2 days, and that didn't happen. This line is sentiment and still neutral. So you don't have institutions, buying the amount of calls that they typically do when prices come off of a low. So there are pluses and minuses here to what's going on. Now, notice this is the 10-year interest rates. This was down earlier in the morning, and the markets kind of brushed it off by holding on to the gains during the day. But this reversal that we see here on this bar right here, if that's going higher tomorrow, that's going to line up to form a sell setup over here. So this is making lower highs, right? Lower low, coming up to where it should make a lower high. The momentum slowed. Let me just so you can make this a little easier to see there. Right? The candle range, the ranges between the high and the low, they slowed up there, which is going to make it relatively easy to break the prior bar's low. And then there's, the unfilled gap, which is right here, which would be the obvious place where it's going to go down to. Now, there's some CPI news coming out tomorrow, inflation data, which everybody's interested in now because of inflation. But this 400 level is going to be a big level if it comes down to there should be buyers there. There's a huge amount of open interest in SPX options, it puts in calls, which should pin it there, meaning it should hold it at that level. It could even do for a couple of days or into the end of the week to the quadruple witching. So that's something to keep in mind as we get into the latter part of the weeks. And then let's take a look at intraday, what's going on. We typically don't look at this in the pre-market anyway, but this is something that we look at and talk about in the green trading room, our intraday trading room. There's a 5-minute chart of SPX, and we look at the futures as well. But this is the NYSE tick down below here. And it started off the day with this big blast up. Now, typically a move up like that in the NYSE tick at the open would suggest continued strength. And there was to a certain degree, but you can see it just petered out there right at around 10:30, which is what we call the second reversal period. The first is 10 o'clock to 10:10. And then it began to pull back toward the low of the day. And you see how the ticks pulled back here. Now, that tick going up as high as it did, if it was to happen down here, I'm not going to scroll back to show you that, but when it comes off of a low and you get that kind of a tick reading coming off of a low point, majority of the time it's going to keep going during the day, meaning that pullback would have been a buying opportunity and it would not have failed. It would have continued to go higher. Something else that we look at, the advanced decline line intraday. And you can see I've got different horizontal lines here at 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And what I want to see is where it is during the day. And going up above 2,000, that was great. Confirmation of the move up. And it held up relatively well, even though it began to deteriorate during the day, but it held up at a pretty relatively high level, which was good. Which says, you know what, don't short this market because it's still holding up relatively well. Volatility index, it opened up there. So it means something to do with options expiration, but as this is trending up, if this was trending down, the AD line, and the S&P had rolled over, that creates a bias to sell short. And we have down here 60-minute chart of SPX with that AD line. And so you can see as it came off of the low last week, it moved up and it's just been hanging here pretty tight. And that consolidation on that move up supports a move that this could move up tomorrow. If it can break out above these highs, there should be buyers because as we look to the left, as we always do, and that's where the next significant resistance area is up there. I'm just going to put that up on the other charts, right at the top of that big wide range bar. On the other hand, if this should gap down below these lows, that's what we call an end of day base. Right? It was basing at the end of the day. So it held up quite nicely throughout the day, which if it moves up tomorrow, in this time frame, it's not extended. In this one, it is. However, what's extended could become more extended. However, if it breaks down and gaps below this base, that's going to open up the door to pulling back probably toward this 4,000 level because there isn't much to stop it from going down. Yeah, we got the unfilled gap down there. It'll stop there, but a consolidation like this into the end of the day tells us that institutions are expecting it to continue higher. And maybe it will. That's their expectation. If it gaps down under these lows, their expectations get dashed and they're going to hit the bid, just like anybody else would. They may buy at a prior low. We'll see how that progresses if they do. But what we'll be watching tomorrow is which way does it go? And then if it does this AD line stay at a relatively high level throughout the trading day, especially in the morning, which would support it continuing to go higher. If the volatility index is trending down, that supports a bias that it can go higher. And then our expectation is it'll go higher until it fails. So, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll update this in the morning pre-market, as we always do, at 9 o'clock. So log in and we'll update this accordingly. Of course, you're always welcome to ask questions and we'll answer them live. So we'll talk in the morning. Have a great night.